This is the Spectrum 14900 frangible quick disconnect, meaning that it is not only a breakaway fuel valve, but it is also a frangible quick disconnect, meaning that you can manually disconnect the two halves and close off an auxiliary tank, a fuel probe, etc., while the system is still pressurized without losing any fuel. And I'll show you how simple it is to operate it. First thing I'm going to do is to manually lock the valve balls in place. So I've just locked them in place using those two handles. Then moving to the knurled ring, which is at the center of the frangible quick disconnect assembly, I'm going to move that button down. As it says arm, I'm going to move that button down. Oh, I'm not fully engaged yet. There we go. To the first click, which is set. And at that point, what I've done is I've moved the two halves of the frangible quick disconnect assembly slightly apart. And of course, the balls are held open, but you get no fuel flow because, again, the two valve halves are locked in place. Now what I'm going to do is slowly allow the spring-loaded balls to close. Now I've closed off both halves of the quick disconnect assembly, and I'm going to go back to that knurled ring, back to release, which is the second click. That allows me to take the two valve halves apart. And once again, you've done that without depressurizing the system, without any fuel leakage. So for the purposes of disconnecting an auxiliary fuel tank, a refuel probe, basically anything that you want to take out of your fuel system, you've done so without any leakage, without depressurizing the system. At the same time, because you have not disturbed those green screws, the frangible elements of the breakaway valve remain in place. Taking that quick disconnect apart had no bearing upon disturbing the frangible screws. So I'm going to bring back the two halves. I've oriented the two keys together. I'm going to lock them together. And once again, using that knurled ring, I go to set. Basically, everything I did to take apart the valve, I'm going to do in reverse to join it again. So I've gone to set. Now what I've done is I've joined the two halves. So when I open the balls, regardless of the fuel system pressure, approximately 60 psi, you can't force the two halves apart, and of course they're sealed. Once again, I'm going to arm the valve by going to these handles. I've locked them in place. I'm going to go back to arm. Now I've brought the two halves of the quick disconnect together. They're completely locked, and I'm going to disconnect the handles and stow them the way they belong. And once again, you have fuel flow through the valve without any issue. That completes the assembly and disassembly operations. You can see how simple it is.